Hello, readers. Welcome to 20 Questions with Your Favorite Author, where we ask authors important questions like, why would you agree to be on this podcast? I'm Kelly Lynn Colby, editorial director at Cursed Dragon Ship Publishing. For episode 4, I have the honor of interviewing Todd Fahnestock. Todd Fahnestock is a fantasy sci-fi author of the best-selling Tower of the Four, Threadweavers, and the Whispering Prince series. He was a finalist in the Colorado Authors League Writing Awards for the past 2 years for Charlie Fiction, his time travel novel, and The Undying Man, Book 2 of The Whisper Prince. His passions are fantasy and his quirky, fun-loving family. When he's not writing, he teaches Taekwondo, swaps middle-grade humor with his son, plays Ticket to Ride with his wife, scribes modern slang from his daughter, and goes on morning walks with Galahad, the Weimaraner. Visit Todd at www.toddfahnestock.com. If he's not your favorite now, he will be after. Welcome, Todd.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So glad to have you. So we'll ask, as you have your wonderful winter is coming holiday sweater on. It's very nice. I would like to ask as my first question, what is your favorite holiday tradition?
Oh, goodness. There's so many great ones. Okay, so favorite holiday tradition. Well, we just put up our tree last night, so that's one of our main favorite holiday traditions. I think like putting the ornaments on the tree and listening to really old Christmas music, like, you know, Bing Crosby kind of old Christmas music, and then drinking eggnog. Eggnog is a huge component to the trimming of the tree event. So that's definitely one of my favorites.
I have to ask a follow-up question. Is it spiked?
Please. Is it spiked? I actually, I am no stranger to drinking, but I do not like the taste of alcohol in my eggnog. I don't like it even. And in fact, there are some eggnogs. This is an issue every single year. There are some eggnogs that actually put that sort of sting in the taste. There are some that don't, and there are some that do. And I cannot get the brands that do. I cannot do it. They cannot have the sting of alcohol without having any alcohol in them. It's not good.
That's so funny. I can't have alcohol in any milk-based drink, so I think that's hilarious. Never had a White Russian. Can't do it. That's hilarious. All right, that's a good answer. I love it. Not that it could be a bad answer, but here you go. Now, I will say I like to ask authors, because this podcast is for readers, and the number one question readers ask are, where do you get your ideas from? However, I have a specific one for you, because sometimes ideas come from strange places, right? But they quickly fade. But rumor has it your novel, Summer of the Fetch, has a fascinating Genesis story with follow-through. That's the impressive.
Yes.
So could you tell us about that?
So Summer of the Fetch is okay. So I'll give you the hook for Summer of the Fetch so people know what we're talking about to start. Perfect. Essentially, there's this young man, 17 years old. He's rock climbing in Canyonlands. It's the first time that he's ever rock climbed, and he's getting to the top. He's almost to the top, and he gets stuck. It's the first time he's ever led a climb, which those of you who know anything about climbing know that you have to like kind of place protection as you go up, and then if you fall, you kind of have to fall past your protection, and then it catches you. So he's gone 30 feet beyond his last piece of pro, and he hits this overhang, and he doesn't know what to do. And anybody, like I said, anybody who's been rock climbing has been to that point before where you're like, looking for the hold and you can't find it, and your fingers are starting to give out and your muscles are starting to give out, and it's called melting off the rock. You're starting to melt off the rock, and he sees a hold that he can get to, but he's going to have to jump for it. He can't reach it. There's no move to get there, so he's got to just jump and try and get it. He jumps, and he misses. And as he's falling, these two hands come down, grab his wrists, pull him up, and secure him on the hold, right? And he climbs to the top of the cliff, and sitting on the top of the cliff on a rock, poised in full climber regalia, is this beautiful redheaded woman, and she says, "I'm your fetch." And he's like, "What's a fetch?" She says, "If you inspire me, if you go out into the world and you do everything you've ever been afraid of, everything you've ever been inspired to do, if you show me and inspire me, I will make you invincible for the summer. But on the eve of your 18th birthday, you will die." And he reaches out and grabs her hand and accepts the deal. So that's kind of the hook for the story. And this story is, as I mentioned, set in 1988. And for years and years and years, I've been wanting to write something semi-autobiographical. And every time I'd start writing something semi-autobiographical or even autobiographical, I would get like, I'd be really excited, get one chapter in, and then the next chapter I'd be like, yeah, it's still going. And then by the third chapter, I'm like, this is my boring, old, stupid life, and nobody's going to want to read about my boring, old, stupid life. And so it would get shelved, and I would never finish it. So I had this spark of an idea, because the idea of the fetch, this sort of, it's there's a history to the fetch, and the fetch. The word fetch comes from Irish folklore, but the concept of the fetch actually was based even in earlier times over in Scandinavia, by a creature called a filgjar, and I'm probably mispronouncing that, but if you saw the word, you would mispronounce it too. It's like Fylgyhar, something like that. It's ridiculous.
Too many Y's.
Yeah, spelling wise. So, anyways, it's this luck avatar, essentially. This luck guardian angel that can follow certain families. Anyway, so I've been wanting to put that in a story for a long time, and I went to bed on the night of the 19th. And this idea was kind of in my mind. It's like I've been wanting to write something from my past, something about my high school, something about Durango, something about some of these different elements that were in my life when I was at that time, plus certain things that happened to me in college, like rock climbing. I was not a rock climber in high school, but I was in college. And so I went to sleep on the 19th with this sort of simmering in my mind, got up on the 20th and wrote the first chapter, was like really excited about it, went to bed, got up the next day, read the first chapter, and was like, well, this sucks. And so it was like the same scenario all over again. And I was like, I'm just going to put this in the shelf. But I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try one more time. Just one more time. I'll rewrite chapter 1 and see if it grabs me. I rewrote chapter 1, and the muse descended from on high to sit on my desk and play her lute. And I tell you, I could not type fast enough to keep up with the ideas that just rushed out of me. And it was like every time there might have been a moment where I didn't have an inspiration, I would remember something actual from my past. It would kind of slip into that spot, and then I'd rush forward again. And I tell you, it got to the point, like when I got to the halfway point, I'm like, wow, I'm actually going to write this book. This is actually going to happen this time, right? And then when I got to the 3/4 pole mark, I was like so tired, because this book took 13 days for the rough draft. I wrote like 60,000 words in 13 days. It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. And it got to the point where the inspiration was coming so much that I felt like this vessel that water was flowing through, but the vessel was starting to break. And I'm like, I don't know how much longer I can keep typing on this book. Anyway, so it was quite an experience. I've never had anything to that extent before. Though Charlie Fiction was close, this one just completely took me over. I did not eat. I did not sleep. I did not pay attention to my wife or my children. I didn't do anything except for write. And after 13 days, boom, it was done. So that's the story of Summer of the Fetch, and fun story. If you want an escape road trip 80s rock climbing love story with a twist, it is for you. It's what you want to read.
That's awesome. And Chris Mandeville was kind enough to put the link in the chat there, so anyone on who wants to see.
My avatar, always taking care of me.
She is. She's wonderful. Let's see. We do have a question from the audience. Let's see. So, question for Todd. This is from Dave Dunn. You've had an amazing year, 15 releases, I think, something like that. Can you talk about how long your book process is from first draft to final release?
So, if you're talking about just this year, it's been pretty rapid. Though I will confess that I think a lot of these releases have been shorter releases, so they're not like, 300 to 500 page novels. But yes, I think you're close. I don't know if it's 15, but it's probably 12 or 13. So it was a lot. But it essentially, I've actually slipped into this rhythm the last month and a half. Like before, I was kind of ruled by inspiration, i.e. Summer of the Fetch. And now I'm like, I got to get 2,000 words. If I don't get 2,000 words, I'm staying up till midnight, and I go to sleep at 9, just so you know. I'm staying up as long as it takes to finish up the 2,000 words and move forward. And I've slipped into this really great rhythm, which if I ever write a book about writing books, if I ever do my like writers, here's how you write a book, it will include this up until about 1:00 schedule that I have now. So pretty much I wake up at about 5:30 or 6:00, depending on when the dog starts whining. And he's my alarm clock now. I haven't used an alarm clock for like 1.5 years now because we've had this dog that like his internal clock is ridiculous. I mean, like it's within 5 minutes. Like he knows he's supposed to be fed at 2:30. He comes to me at like 2:25 and sits in front of me. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, they say dogs can't tell time, but around dinner time, my dogs assure me they can tell time.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. I mean, if dogs can't tell time, then he's a freak of nature because he totally can. And so it's pretty much like 5:45, and this is what I start to hear from his kennel. Like he'll just start leaking like a tea kettle. He'll just noise that like anyway. So and then I got to get up because I can't sleep through that noise. I can't.
He's like, my bladder's full. Please, like, Daddy, please.
Time to go. Time to get up. Anyways, I was talking about something. Oh, so that's my schedule. So I get up 5:40, 5:45, 5:30, whatever. I get to the keyboard after putting away the dishes, making coffee for Lara, letting the dog out, feeding the dog, feeding the cats, all the stuff that I kind of do as my morning routine. I'll come up and get started no later than 6:30 is my goal. Then I'll write from 6:30 to 9:00. At 9:00, I put it down no matter what because I have determined I've got to get exercise in every single day. You can't do with exercise. You can't just be like writing a novel. You can just write a novel for 13 days and have a novel. You can't just work out for 13 days and have good health. That doesn't work that way. So at least not for me, not at this age.
Or for anyone. No, you're correct.
And so I'll get up and I'll go for a 6-mile walk. And on the walk, I will listen to audiobooks on the business side of writing, like either, how to market, how to write the craft side, how to, organize your schedule, how to do indie stuff. There's all kinds of resources out there. So on the way out on the walk, I listen to that. On the way back, I listen to story. Like I'll listen to some fiction story to either, to study the field out there of what's being created. Right. And I'll choose all over the board. Sometimes it will be nonfiction. 99% of the time it's going to be fiction. But you'd be surprised how little of it is fantasy fiction just because I've read so much fantasy fiction, like it has to be amazing for me to enjoy it at this point, just because I know all the tropes. I know all the, the different specifications and the things that you've got to hit. And if they don't hit them and hit them well, I'm like, I have to turn it off.
You're like, I'm not into it. Sorry.
Yep.
No, I feel you. I'm glad to hear that you read though. So that's, I have this strong belief that if you're going to be a writer, you really need to know what's being written now.
Absolutely.
You can't just have read something from the 60s and you might've read it 1,000 times and have it memorized. Readers have changed.
Yeah.
People have changed. So you have to keep up.
True. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So true. Yeah. So true. I mean, actually, interestingly, I'm listening to a throwback right now, the Princess of Mars by Edgar Rice Burroughs, and
nice.
Looking at the way the prose is constructed and the way the dialogue is constructed and all that stuff. It seems very old to me. I mean, you can tell the difference, and I loved those stories growing up.
Yep.
And I haven't read them since I was probably a teenager, right? So it's kind of this neat, interesting thing to go back. But I mean, one thing that is just amazing about those books is the world building. I mean, just so creative. I mean, like even today, the stuff that he's coming up with is pretty original. And back in the day, I mean, gee, I can't even imagine. Like there was nothing like that out there. Anyway,
true originals, man. True originals.
Yeah, so that's my routine in the morning. I come back, I have lunch, and then the afternoon is usually spontaneous because I bridle under structure. So just to get me to do half a day's worth of structure, that's tough enough. And it's working, so I like it.
Nice. Yeah, Mark and Bill agree with you. They said they love those books.
Nice.
All right, I have a really tough one for you now. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
What color are your favorite pair of shoes?
Electric blue.
Electric blue? What kind of shoes are they?
Do you want to see them?
Yes, you have them? That'd be awesome.
Be right back. They saved my life. There's a story that goes with these shoes.
We had story time. Todd was the right person to come on. I hope everyone's having fun. And I want to thank Jessica and Chris for following. Thank you so much. I didn't want to interrupt awesome stories. Oh, and Wolf Lady, thank you for following. Did I miss anyone else? I don't think so. That's awesome. Thank you. You'll be here for all the awesome authors. We're here every Tuesday, 8 p.m. Central. Are you here? Okay, let's see them. I was wasting time. Okay. Oh, they're so pretty. They are bright. So that must be what you walk in, huh?
This is what I hiked the Colorado Trail in.
Oh, I have a question about that. So don't tell me the story because I'm going to ask you a question about that. So keep them. Those are great props for later.
Those shoes saved my life. They are my favorite shoes.
Well, I guess I could skip to the story. Who says I have to do these in order? So how about this summer, you took a monumental trek across Colorado with your son?
Yes, over 450 miles we walked.
Holy moly. My son and husband did Philmont, and I think that was like 82 miles, and they almost died. So that's impressive. All right. So what in the heck possessed you to torture yourself like that?
It's a good question. I think the first part of the answer to that question is that I have this persisting notion that I'm still in my 20s. And so when it all started when this friend of mine from college, I've known her for forever, her daughter wanted to hike the Colorado Trail when she was 16. And she had just turned 16 not too long ago, and she wanted to go with a friend, but the friend couldn't go. And so she was really bummed because she wanted to do it during the summer. And the mom was like, I don't want her to go alone. And I was just, I don't even know who I could send with her, And I was like, I'll go. And she's like, no. I'm like, no, what do you mean no? She's like, you're 50. I'm like, and I remember thinking in my head, I'm like, screw you. Like I can still do it.
I can totally do this.
I'll shorten the story as much as I can. This is a phrase that I use with Chris a lot. We talk almost every day when I'm walking my trail. And I always say, long story short, and then I proceed to talk for like an hour and a half. So
should I be giving Chris a buzzer so she knows when to pause you? Is that what I should have done?
Yes. So long story short, the daughter of my friend ended up going with her father. Her father, like a whole bunch of time opened up for him. And by the time that all kind of wound down, I had asked Dash if he wanted to go with me and this friend of mine's daughter. And he's like, sure. And then when that kind of went its separate way, he and I were going to do the trail. And by then I was excited, right? And just assumed, hey, I have run a marathon. I have, gotten my black belt in Taekwondo. I've done all these physical things. Hiking the trail, all I got to do is walk. How hard can it be?
Famous last words.
Famous last words. And any extreme hiker out there is just probably chuckling because you do have to train for this sort of thing. And I can tell you firsthand, you have to train for this sort of thing. I have pictures of my feet after the first week. You do not want to see them. They would gross you out. Suffice it to say, the pictures of my feet after the first week would gross you out. And I was this close to not continuing on. And there are 5 weeks in this. Do not show the pics, Chris says.
Yeah, my husband's blisters had blisters, so I am sure I've seen similar pics.
Yes. So he's a hiker as well.
No. It was just Philmont. See, he didn't prep either.
Yes.
And his body paid for it.
Yeah, my son was the one who kept me going during that. He was the one. I was like, buddy, I don't know. I just don't know if I'm going to be able to keep going because I was literally trying to levitate. There's when you can't step on your feet, like what else are you supposed to step on? I mean, you get really creative. You step on the edges of your feet, and you step on the tiptoes of your feet or the heels of your feet. I mean, it's just whatever you can think of to stop the pain. Anyway, so we did that. It was 5 weeks we were out there, and the first 2 were pretty rough, and then the third one was pretty interesting. And then at the end of the third one, as we were just starting to get acclimated, I went and sprayed myself in the face with bear mace. That was really nice. You weren't
being tormented. You weren't being tormented enough. You had to bring it to the next level.
Yes, it was at a moment where we didn't know if we were going to have a ride. I thought Laura was lost. She was supposed to pick us up. She was 2.5 hours late. The sun was going down. I'm like, if we don't get a ride now, I don't know if we're going to get a ride. And we were out of food. We could have had some water, but like we couldn't have stayed for much longer because, you know, we'd already hit that hiker hunger threshold where we were just starving all the time. So we couldn't have hung out for very long, though we did have enough water because we had a water filter also, obviously, and there was a water source close by. But we were starting to panic about, okay, we got to get to a town, right? And that's when I sprayed myself in the face with bear mace. So that just added to the whole moment. It was great. So this is probably, yes, Jaglerns, yikes, bear mace. Jaglerns says, yes.
That's Jessica. Yeah, that's Jessica.
Jessica, yeah, it was bear mace. Honest to God, bear mace that Chris made me take. Actually, I should blame her. She kept waiting for me to blame her because I wasn't going to take bear mace, and she made me take bear mace. And so I should blame her now because she's been expecting it all this time, and I haven't because, you know, it's not really her fault that I pulled out the bear mace and operated it incorrectly and sprayed myself. But let's blame her anyways.
She wants to make it clear that she did not tell you to spray yourself with it.
She did not.
That was not part of it. No.
So what happened was I had put it in this quick draw pouch on my backpack. And while we were waiting for the ride, I put my backpack on the ground and sat on the backpack, which was the first time I'd ever done that because I always told myself, don't sit on the backpack because you could puncture the, the sleeping pad or whatever. But I was so exhausted and so mad that I just like, screw it. And of course I sat down and the little safety catch on the bear mace came off sideways and I heard this hissing sound. I was like, where's that hissing sound coming from? I was like, oh no, I've punctured my pad. That's what it is. And I got down and I realized it was the bear mace. And I picked up the bear mace and I thankfully turned it away from myself. And I tried to put the catch back on. Well, I had a Cliff Bar in my hand. And for some stupid reason, I didn't throw the Cliff Bar into the gully or put it down or anything. I just
kept You were starving. No, I get that.
It was my last Cliff Bar, too.
That's right.
And afterwards, it smelled like bear mace, so I couldn't eat it anyways. I should have just thrown it in the dirt. I could have more easily eaten it if it had been dirt covered as opposed to mace covered. And so the thing is all slippery with bear mace, and I slipped and depressed the trigger. And it shot out like a shotgun with like curls of bear mace coming around the side. So if ever you have cause to use bear mace, I did not shoot it into my eyes. I shot it directly away from myself, and the blast of it made it curl back into my eyes, right?
So now I'm seeing you and the bear curled up on the trail going, ow.
There was no bear.
No, but I mean, if you were actually going to have to use it,
yes.
Like there's a flaw in the system.
Yeah, and I'm guessing the bear would get over it way faster than I would.
And now he's really mad.
So if ever all of you lovely readers out there ever need to use bear mace and the bear's coming at you, trust me, point, close your eyes and shoot. Do not have your eyes open when you shoot that thing. Or go like this, I mean, like, whichever.
That's awesome. Yeah, Chris says that you're usually extraordinarily coordinated. So this was particular. I'm like, wait, did you say black belt in Taekwondo? She's right. You really should have been able to handle this.
I should have. There was absolutely no reason. And
except you were starving. Let's face it, our brains don't work properly.
Yes, it gave rise to my second and my final, I think, trail name, which was Spicy Eyes.
Oh, I don't know. They've given you a new one, Quick Draw.
Quick Draw. Oh, where were you in segment?
Oh, I didn't. It's the audience. That was Mark. I'm not that.
Where were you? You should have been there.
Okay, so let's see. Here you go. I have a serious one for you. You ready?
Yes.
What's your favorite flavor of ice cream?
Utterly chocolate.
Well, that was easy.
Well, it could also be Moose Tracks. That's also a really good one. I'm kind of like a Labrador Retriever. You put something in front of me, I'm going to eat it. So any ice cream is really good.
There's on it.
Although I'm not that particularly fond of cherry ice cream, much to the chagrin of both my children who adore cherry ice cream.
Well, that just means they don't have to share it. I don't see the
That's
problem.
right. Mm-hmm. They don't.
So question, what do you hope your readers get from your work?
Oh, that's an excellent question. And a good serious question too.
I had to bring down the mood. That's my job.
Yeah, no, I don't want to bring down the mood, but that's like there's there's a whole story attached to why I write, and that is directly attached um, to what I write about and what I hope people are going to get out of it. So, long story short, I warned you.
This might be 10 questions with
It
your favorite
doesn't
author.
mean what it sounds like it means. So long story short, when I was 14, my parents got divorced. And during that time, it was pretty awful for me. I'm very much a guy that doesn't like conflict, which is interesting because I've studied long and hard how to end a conflict if I need to. but I'm a guy that I don't like conflict. I don't want to get into it. I don't like people being angry at one another. I'd much rather make a friend than an enemy. And so this whole like schism between my parents was just horrible for me, right? I didn't know how to make it
Because you
stop.
couldn't fix it, right? Yeah.
I couldn't fix it. Yeah, it was like it was beyond me. And so some of my friends actually had situations like that. There was a lot of divorces happening in the 1980s, and they chose some pretty dark paths. Vandalism, some of them stealing, some of them got into drugs. There was some pretty bad things that they did. Let their grades just go to hell in school, ignored their schoolwork, things like that. And I fell into reading fantasy novels. Edgar Rice Burroughs, Lloyd Alexander, Piers Anthony, Terry Brooks, Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman, all of these early fantasy writers. And I met Margaret Weiss later on. She actually got me my first gig, so we can talk about that at some point if you want. But anyways, I fell into this, and this is a speech that I give to schools where I talk about, I introduce the word trope, and usually elementary school kids don't know what the word trope is. And you'd be surprised how many elementary school teachers don't know what the word trope is either. But I talk about how, the epic fantasy trope is somebody with very little power and somebody with great big power are going to fight, right? There's going to be a battle in the end. And over the course of the story, the person with little power kind of goes on this journey where they either accrue more personal power themselves or get that item like the ring that is able to be to find the Achilles heel of the bad guy. And therefore, in the end, this person you would never have expected, like Frodo Baggins, to be able to defeat Sauron in the end does actually do it. So, gee, I wonder why that trope really appealed to me at that moment in my life where I had no control over this, my world crumbling apart. So I didn't
so many of us.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand at the time why I wanted to do that, but later I did. And I've just been eternally grateful to all of those authors and all authors in general for putting themselves out there and creating these things that could have such an impact on me in such a positive way. I mean, ideas move the world. Creativity creates everything that we know. So, I mean, like, oftentimes I have been to this place, and I'm sure lots of writers have been to this place where it's like, what am I doing? I'm wasting my days. I'm just being frivolously writing down these stupid little stories that don't matter at all. That, like, it's not like I built a skyscraper or cured cancer, or I'm just writing these stupid little stories. But I tell you, that 14-year-old wouldn't understand what I was talking about. That 14-year-old me would have been, this changed my life. It completely changed the entire trajectory. Ideas move the world. And so that's why I write and what I want to put into my stories. And this is actually, do you see how I came back around to the original question?
I'm impressed.
Hear your question. What I put into my stories, I want there to be an inspiration in the end. I want there to be this maybe coming close to an answer, of what one can and should do when faced with such horrific odds. I like heroes. I write because of heroes, and I want people to feel that sense of heroism at the end of a story.
Perfect. That is a great reason. I couldn't think of a better one. And I'm pretty sure I think we had a question from Mark, and the question was, how's that book coming along?
Okay, so Uh,
There's an
Mark
inside
actually
joke
went
here.
and bought me dinner so that I would start writing the book that he wanted to read, which, I got to
Ooh.
say, that was a very effective tactic. I came back from the Colorado Trail and I'd been kicking around an idea of what kind of story I wanted to write to incorporate the elements of the trail. And of course, I was thinking purely fiction. I was like, you know what? I'm going to write a fiction story, and I've got a couple of ideas for stories. One involves a young woman who's like an overachiever in high school, but in her senior year, something really horrible happens to, this leader of her alpha girl clique, right? And so instead of pursuing this just naked achievement all the time, just like pure achievement all the time, she decides to go hike the Colorado Trail to kind of find her spiritual self, right? So that was this idea that I had. And and Mark sat and listened to me, as I'm, drinking my 14th Coke at this Mexican restaurant that we're sitting at, and and he's like, "Well, I think you ought to write 3 books." And I was like, that was just such an outrageous idea. I mean, that, of course, immediately I was interested. I'm like, 3? Like 3 Colorado Trail books? He's like, sure. He's like, so I think you should write the fiction story that you want to write, which I could tell he has no interest in at all. It's like, obviously you need to do that, so write the fiction book. But what I want to read is I want to read your actual journey. I want you to tell me what the story was from your perspective. And then when you're done with that, I want you to go and write your son's perspective. So you can have these like dueling dad at age 50, son at age 14 perspectives about what was important to you on the trail. And I remember walking home, because the restaurant we went to is close enough to my house that I can walk. I remember walking home and thinking it over and thinking it over. And I was like, I wonder if I could even do that. I wonder if, because like I told you before, anytime I tried to ever write something autobiographical, goes great guns for 1 chapter, maybe 2, and then it just completely falls down a hole, right?
Well, it's hard
So,
to see the meaning in your own life. I understand that. Mm-hmm.
And so I woke up the next morning and started writing on it, and it was not to the fire hose, drinking from a fire hose extent that Summer of the Fetch was, but it just pulled me along. It just started coming out, paragraph after paragraph, page after page. And so I started, I think it was, what was it, Chris? She can probably tell me. I think it was like the 12th of November when I started this book. I abandoned not, and I'm sorry if anybody here is a Whisper Prince fan, but I was working on book 3 of the Whisper Prince for NaNoWriMo, and I got about 25,000 words written on it, and then, Mark came to town. So you can blame Mark. If you wanted to read the Whisper Prince early next year, you're going to have to wait till late next year, probably. And I started writing on this Colorado Trail book. Well, I'm like 65,000 words into it at this point. It's just been more than 2,000 words a day, boom, ba-boom, ba-boom, boom, ba-boom. And I don't know what it is, and I even hesitate talking about it. If you follow Stephen King's rules of, how to write, you really shouldn't talk about something in the middle of a rough draft. But Stephen King and I don't share that sensibility. I pretty much tell anybody anything at any given moment. But I will say I'm kind of guarding against deciding what the book is. Like, is it an adventure book on the trail? Is it a sort of pseudo parenting book? Because there's a lot of interaction between Dash and I, and a lot of parenting moments. Is this sort of like I did this with my son, and this is how we both evolved, me as a parent,
Right.
But there have been I think some of my best writing in this book, and perhaps some of my best writing ever, is when something happened on the trail and I will scurry down a rabbit hole to my past, to like when I was 14 or 12 or 10. And these momentous events that have shaped my personality started to pop up. So it's possible at this point that this is like some kind of memoir or something, like some kind of like, this is how Todd Fahnestock came to be Todd Fahnestock. So we'll see. We'll see in the end. I mean, those may get cut, in fact. I mean, like, I am not a stranger to slaying my darlings, as who said that first? Ernest Hemingway, I think. Kill your darlings. So, a lot of people said it. I can't remember who said it first. Yep. So I'm not afraid to do that and just keep that as, this is the best thing I ever wrote. Too bad it couldn't go into a book. Maybe
it couldn't go into this book. You never know.
That's right. It could go into some later book. So we'll see. It's very, very loose at this point. But there's some real gems in there amidst a whole bunch of crap, I'm sure, which is usually the way it goes in a rough draft. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So we can blame Mark Stallings for that.
Well, we'll wait whether we want to blame him or give him credit after we get to read the book. So we'll see, Mark. We'll see. So let's see. Ooh, how about this one? What is your least favorite chore around the house?
Ooh, least favorite chore
Least
around
favorite.
the house.
Mhm. He's like, I don't know. What do I do around the house? Come on
There's like
now.
a bunch that I don't like to do, but there's one in specific, and it's not popping to my head. Like it's one that I'm like, I would rather do anything else than that, and I can't remember what the heck it is now. I've just blocked it from my mind. It's so traumatic that I can't imagine.
So apparently you don't do it very often. Oh, Chris knows. See, Chris really does know you. She even knows what chore you
what
do.
is it? Chris, remind me. She usually does this for me. Writing. No. Dave says
Writing. Yeah, that's right. No, Dave, that's some of ours.
that's
Cleaning
one of the two
bathrooms.
that I was thinking of. Cleaning bathrooms is definitely not my favorite, but I'll do it. I just don't ever do it. I would do it, but I do it. So let's just go with cleaning bathrooms. If the one that I'm trying to think of pops up, I will. I'll shout it out. But it's either cleaning bathrooms or emptying the dog run.
Oh, that's part of loving the dog, right? We have to do the rest of it. Yeah.
Yes.
Let's see. You are a mainstay at many conventions. And actually, Zafo has a different picture he can pull up too. So, Zafo, if you want to pull up the convention one. So, you're a mainstay at many conventions. I met you at Superstars as both a vendor and a panelist. So, I've seen you under both roles. So, can you tell us about your favorite experience?
Oh, at a con?
Mm-hmm. And it could be either, with a fan or on a panel or any of those things.
Give me a second to think. Okay, so there are so many amazing moments at a con. Probably in my top 5 was being on a panel with Terry Brooks. God, that was great. Finding out that I had been mispronouncing Shannara for ever. It's Shannara, but I still can't say it that way because it's been Shannara since I was, 12.
Yeah, but what an awesome example does he put for the rest of us authors? He's like, look, everyone pronounces it wrong. I gave up. It's fine.
Yeah, yeah.
For you.
That was amazing. So being able to do that was amazing. I think meeting Donald Moss for the first time and having him become my agent, that was height. That was quite a height. And actually, Chris was instrumental in that. I won't say how. She fractured the rules a little bit, and I don't want to get her in trouble. But
this is being recorded. We could talk about it later. That's awesome. Terry Brooks, I like that answer. That's a great answer.
Yes, one of my highlights. Jonathan Mayberry was on a panel with him at Superstars, and he called me the Hermione Granger of Comic-Con conventions. That was pretty awesome.
That's awesome. I was on a panel with Jonathan Mayberry at Dragon Con, so yeah, that's really cool.
I enjoyed that quite a bit. Yeah. But I have to
love
say,
that man.
The highlight that's coming to my mind was at FanX in Utah.
Okay.
I was selling books, and I had been trying to get into FanX a couple years in a row, but it's a super packed convention. Like, you have to have been going for years to even get a table there. And they expanded this new section to allow us to allow new people to come in. And so I got a table that year, and I got in, and we were like way off to the side, and we were like this little afterthought that, completely off the main track of everything. And it was so bad that there were some people that had left or didn't show up or whatever, and there were probably like a dozen vendors on this makeshift aisle that had come in, and one by one they kept moving to these vacant spots that were in better areas. And I stayed. And I ended up being the only person there. So, like, I had paid for one table, and I had like 4 tables, and I had spread out all my stuff. And my son had come with me, and he had brought a bunch of drawings, so he had his own table. He was supposed to be like part of my table. So we had this whole corner to ourselves. And it actually ended up being good for me, because when you're selling, pictures, people walk up and they're like, I want that one. You give them the picture, and they walk away. But the way that I sell my books, as I imagine you can tell at this point, I can talk and talk and talk. And so if I can start talking to somebody and telling them a story, 9 times out of 10, if I can get them to listen to 60 seconds of me telling a story, they're going to stay for the whole story. And half of the people that stay are going to buy a book, right? So I'm very much into talking to them.
Mm-hmm.
And this woman came by and she said, I've got a certain amount of money and I want to get into a new series and I want to get into a new author, and there are a gazillion authors here. And so I'm going around and I'm, kind of checking out people and seeing what they're selling. And so I'm like, okay. So I told her about Threadweavers and I told her about the Whisper Prince. Tower of the Four didn't exist yet. And I ended up going very deep into Fair Mist, which is the first book of the Whisper Prince, and telling her this whole story about Fair Mist, my hook for Fair Mist. And she's like, I could see her eyes gleaming. You can tell when somebody's interested, right? And usually that's the moment when they say, okay, give me one. Or my favorite is, there was a different guy. I'll tell you about a story in a second. I tend to get distracted. So anyway, we'll stay on her for a moment. And she said, okay, I'm going to go and listen to some other pitches and I'll be back. Kiss of death. Anytime somebody says, I'll be back, like the odds of them actually coming back drop to 10%. So even if they have that gleam in their eye, you just went from 90% chance to sell something to 10% chance to sell something. Because in a place like a Comic-Con, everything is shiny and bright and cool and interesting. And, they can get caught in a million different places. So she left. This was probably, I don't know, midway through the day. Didn't see her again. This was the final day, right? As I'm closing up, as I'm like starting to break things down for the final day, she appears and she's like, okay, I went to every table in the place. I'm like, holy crap. She's like, gotta have your book. Gotta have it. You had the best sales pitch. I've got to have Fair Mist. She read it. She gave me a 5-star review afterwards. She read it in a day and a half. She was like, oh my gosh, he gave me this hype. I loved the sales pitch and the book lived up to it and more. I just love it, love it, love it. So that was a fantastic moment. Probably, well, it's the highlight I'm remembering at this particular moment.
Which perfectly works. I love that.
And I have to tell you about this one guy though, because you get into this mode where you could go 2-3 hours without selling a book, and then all of a sudden you'll sell 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Go really quick. And so I had been having one of those days where half the day had gone by, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I do? I drove all the way out here. I paid the money. I'm gonna go home with $400 in my pocket, and I won't even recoup my expenses. And this guy comes up, and he just does not look like somebody who's gonna purchase anything. He's just like,
somebody made me come here.
Yeah, exactly. And he's like, tell me about this one. And I'm like, okay. And so I'm giving him my sales pitch, and I'm not seeing the gleam in his eye, and I am not seeing any interest whatsoever. And he's like, tell me about this one. And sometimes you'll get people like that. They've got 20 minutes to kill, and they're going to go, make the author jump through hoops and tell them stories. And they're like, okay, thank you. And they'll just leave, right? And I figured this was one of those guys. But you know what? You can never tell. So I kept doing my thing, my little song and dance. And he gets done, and I'm like, so you think you might want to get one? He's like, I'll take all of them.
Holy moly.
It's like, $200, just like that. That was a nice moment. And you just can't tell. You can never tell. Never turn a sour face on anyone, because you just don't know what's going on in their head. That would be the best advice I could give to anyone who was thinking of going to a con and selling books is present to everyone your best face, because you just don't know who's got, $200 in their pocket that they want to spend at your table, and you just got to give them a reason to do it.
Yeah, and it worked.
It totally worked.
It's a numbers game. That's what I tell people. It's a numbers game at the convention. Numbers game. Just talk to everyone.
Yes. Is that Kevin using Cursed Dragon Ship for the text?
Yes.
Okay, yes. He said, or who is listening behind them. Absolutely. You think people aren't watching you do your thing? They're totally watching you do your thing.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I found that my biggest audience, because I write YA fantasy as well, and I always noticed at conventions, my biggest audience was teenage girls with their fathers, because their fathers won't tell them no. They're at a convention with them.
Yeah.
So their teenage daughter's like, oh, I kind of want this book. And the dad's like, oh, get it. It's a book.
Yep, exactly, right? It's like, oh, they want to read. Yeah, no, that's true. So true.
Yeah, it works. It's a nice audience. It works. Let's see. What is your potluck go-to?
Oh, if I bring something to a potluck?
Okay. I like these non sequiturs.
There are 2 foods that I make. Well, there are 3 foods now that I make very well. I make myself an omelet every single day almost. That's what I eat for lunch, and I don't have breakfast. So I am pretty sweet at making omelets, but obviously that's not a potluck thing. It's just one of the 3 things I make. The other thing that I make really well is chocolate chip cookies. I make the best chocolate chip cookies in the world. And if you doubt me, next time I make them, I'll have to give you one. You won't doubt me anymore. And then the third thing that I make, which is my potluck specialty, if I don't have the time, I will make chocolate chip cookies and bring those. But if I do have the time, it's green chili. So chicken green chili.
That sounds delicious. That's a great choices.
It has won awards 2, 3 out of the 5 years that I entered it. So
that's fantastic. We might need that recipe. Let's see. Stephen wants to know if it's a French omelet. French. I can't say French now. A French omelet that you make.
A French omelet. You know what? It's a Todd. I didn't know that there was such a thing as a French omelet. What is a French omelet?
I don't know. Stephen's going to have to tell us. The only thing I know about the French is that they don't like any color. Oh, it's Jacob. Sorry. Hi, Jacob. You were on earlier as McFly. You changed your name. All I know is that the French don't like any color in their eggs. That's the only thing I know. Uh-oh, Dave and Jessica have great ideas. Those cookies need to show up at first pages. Yes. Yes, cookies at first pages.
I mean, like, if you're going to have really good chocolate chip cookies, you have to eat them. I mean, if they're going to be like at that high level, you have to eat them within the first 2 days of them being made. I mean, you can still eat them a week down the road, but they're going to lose something, right? So I'd have to make it like either at Chris's house, you know.
I was just going to say, why don't you just go to Chris's house? That's exactly what I was going to say.
And then you've got like a different kitchen, and not to say that Chris's kitchen is deficient in any way. It is far better than my kitchen in most ways, but it's unfamiliar for me as a cooking space. So
I don't know, superstars people. I'm just hearing excuses, so I don't know.
I will bring cookies. I'm going to bring the cookies. I'll bring them.
We should just all bring cookies and share. All right, so let's see, what else do we have? What is your idea of a vacation?
My idea of a vacation, honestly, hiking the Colorado Trail. I like adventure. I like things that I haven't done. I like physical things that challenge me physically. There's something that pulls me into that. I've done lots of road trips. I enjoy road trips. Like my wife would say, a beach, a drink, toes in the sand, you know, soaking up the sun. I would totally enjoy that. I would like that. But for me, I like an adventure. I really do. It's always pulled me, whether it's a physical adventure, a social adventure, any kind of adventure is that going someplace I've never been before. All cool. Love it.
Fantastic. So you like a vacation where you need a vacation when you get home?
You know, I don't like those vacations, but what some people would consider an adventure vacation to be like that, I don't. I consider like going to a Thanksgiving where I have to, you know, manage the emotional states of all of my relatives. That's the kind of vacation that I need a vacation from when I get home.
Especially earlier when you said you like to solve problems and be a peacemaker, that would be a nightmare. I could see that.
It definitely takes up a lot of my time and energy.
Yes. Gotcha. All right. Steve Ruskin has a question. Hi, Steve.
Yes.
He wants to know how you keep your hair so long and luxurious, and whether it got so bad on the Colorado Trail that you were ever mistaken for Bigfoot or Fabio. You're going to take it down. Oh, there you go. Hair flip. Look at the luxuriousness of that hair.
I really actually have no idea. I use like a 2-in-1 shampoo. It's nothing special. You know, it's like you know, the shampoo and the conditioner. It's like Pantene, which I think is like, you know, the base level shampoo these days. So nothing. I don't do anything to it. Maybe that's why I don't mess with it a whole lot. I don't color it. I don't, you know, try and give it a perm or anything. You know, I mean, if that is even a thing anymore. I think perm is a word that comes from like the 1980s.
That's awesome.
I was never mistaken for Bigfoot. You know, I'm actually not that hairy of a guy, aside from my long, luxurious mane of hair. So there were a lot hairier dudes on the trail, and some women, actually.
And some women. Well, you know, when you can't shave out there, you gotta feel sorry for them. I understand. Yeah, Steve says he wants to be just like you. He didn't say when he grows up, but I heard that in my head.
It's Pantene.
Pantene.
Just like me.
Yeah, I had somebody say, "Oh my gosh, your hair smells good." I was like, it's just shampoo. I don't Let's see. So let's see. Who do we had a question somewhere. Where is it? David. He says, what's a genre you haven't written in that you'd like to try?
Oh, goodness.
And this is our last question, so make it count.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. No pressure.
No pressure.
Thriller, probably. I've never written a thriller, but I feel like my natural talents lend. I have a natural talent for action scenes in like epic fantasy. Like when the swords start flying, it's just like usually I don't do more than one draft of those. It's usually rare. I get into the zone and I can picture it all. So probably a thriller would be fun, I think, to write. Not to mention the fact that I'd like to write something in modern day where there's modern day kind of heroes, and I've just never done that. So utilizing guns and modern technology, being able to use modern phrases and things like that would be fun. So I think thriller. Yeah,
that would be awesome. Well, you were great. I think let's put up the picture with all his books first. We had so many great stories, we didn't actually put up the covers. So I'm actually going to ask one more question, even though we're running late, because I want to ask.
Yeah, sure.
I want to ask, how do you choose these covers? What's the inspiration?
Okay, so I have to give a huge shout out to Rashid Alakroka, who is my cover artist. He's done everything that I've put out for the last 3 years. All of my covers come from him. So you can see the range that he has. I mean, if you look at it closely, you can see that some similarities. You could probably tell that it's the same artist. But I mean, like from the Wildmane covers to Charlie Fiction to Summer of the Fetch to the Tower of the Four to all the short stories that go along with Tower of the Four. I mean, he's just so talented. That I can't talk him up enough. And if ever you want to get a cover, I highly recommend looking up Rashid because he's just so amazing. And on top of that, aside from that, he's a gem to work with. I mean, like you cannot imagine a better, easier person to work with than this guy. I mean, he's just anyway. So the covers often come from me having an idea and then Rashid and I kind of talking it out. So like Charlie Fiction, that came from that. I mean, she's a ghost. She died with the clothes on that she had while she was essentially seducing this guy, and so that's why she doesn't have a shirt. So that's why on the front of the cover, she's got this jacket and no shirt. And then, of course, Summer of the Fetch, a huge part of that story is climbing Half Dome, and that's why he's standing on this iconic car that he drives everywhere, which is a 1967 bright orange El Camino called the Pumpkin, which is a real car that's taken straight from my childhood, my teenage years. Wasn't my car, it was my brother's car. But I stuck it in the story. And then, of course, Tower of the Four it's a found family, high fantasy story. It's these four people who are completely opposite in so many ways, and yet they have to come together and work together to actually uncover their magic. In this world, there are four paths to magic, and you have to have four people for them to all learn those paths at the same time. Otherwise, you can't just go and learn one path of magic on your own. It's physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And if you don't have all four of them together, then you can't learn them. You can't just go off and learn the physical side of magic by yourself. You've got to have four people that bond together. And so it's
love that world building.
So yeah, so that's where the idea for these four characters came from. This sort of privileged, imperious princess, this sort of noble rebel sort of character, and then you've got this sort of rule-breaking Casanova kind of character, and then you've got this angry little street urchin character, and they hate each other for all kinds of different reasons, but they have to come together in the end.
I have to say, I almost didn't do the interview because I was reading the first book, The Quad, and I didn't want to leave. So I highly recommend it. So I can get back to reading. What I would like to know is, where can people find you?
So toddfahnestock.com is the quickest place to look at all the stuff that I do. I'm pretty active on my Facebook page, which is just Todd Fahnestock on author page online. And then friend me on my personal page too. Sometimes I'll throw things up there that I don't put up on my author page, and vice versa. And then my mailing list. So if you go to my website, you'll get a pop-up and sign up for my mailing list. I put out a newsletter less than once a month, so usually once or twice a month. I'm sorry, more than once a month, so once or twice a month.
Excellent. I love it. All right. So yay. Everyone give clap for Todd. Todd was awesome tonight. So yay, Todd. And please make sure to review all the things you read. It's the best present you can give your authors. And also review us. So wherever you get your favorite podcast, if you just leave a review, we'd greatly appreciate it. And we'll see you next week where we interview author D.H. Dunn.